Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going to unpack the fascinating and, honestly, deeply important realities of India's agricultural sector. Whether you're looking at this from an economic perspective, a social perspective, or you're just trying to understand the daily lives of over a billion people, or heck, even why your groceries cost what they do, agriculture is the undeniable foundation of the Indian economy. But as we're going to see, it's also a sector defined by a really massive, complex paradox.
Right, so let's dive into this huge question, because understanding this paradox is absolutely key to understanding the entire economy. We've got a sector that literally feeds a continent-sized nation, and yet the people working the land often face profound economic struggles. So why does this disconnect exist? Well, today we're going to look strictly at the data, the historical systems, and the structural realities that created this exact situation.
Here's a quick roadmap for our explainer. First, we'll cover the economic backbone. Second, the current agricultural reality. Third, causes of low productivity. Fourth, how do we fix it? And finally, we'll wrap up with the Green Revolution.
Okay, starting right off with Section 1, the economic backbone.
The crucial point here is that agriculture doesn't just operate in a vacuum. I mean, yes, obviously it provides daily food grains, but it also supplies essential cash crops, things like cotton and sugarcane, which are the raw materials that literally feed the industrial sector. Plus, with nearly 69% of the population living in rural areas, agriculture is their primary income. Think about it. If agriculture fails, rural incomes drop, which means those folks can't buy industrial goods, like TVs, bikes, or mobile phones. Factories don't get their raw materials, overall demand plummets, and the entire economic machine just grinds to a halt. It's all connected.
Moving on to Section 2, the current agricultural reality. Now, even with the rapid growth we've seen in the service and industrial sectors, agriculture remains a massive employer. Just look at the 2014-2015 data. Nearly half of the entire country's workforce, 49%, is relying directly on agriculture for their daily employment and livelihood. But here is where we hit that massive contradiction. That exact same 49% of the workforce, they are only producing 13.9% of the national income. That is the core of the problem right there. You have half the working population generating barely more than a tenth of the nation's GDP. This massive imbalance points to a really severe issue with productivity per laborer. However, to be fair, the sector hasn't just been standing still. While agriculture's share of export monies shrank pretty drastically, dropping from 70% at independence down to just 14.2% in 2013-14 as other industries grew, the sector still managed to do something pretty miraculous. It actually increased daily food grain availability from 395 grams per person up to 511 grams. So it effectively fed a massively growing population and kept famines at bay. So what's holding it back? Let's get into Section 3. Causes of low productivity. Broadly speaking, there are three main roadblocks keeping agricultural productivity down. And these aren't just isolated issues. They're deeply entrenched institutional, technological, and demographic challenges, and they all kind of feed into one another. Let's start with the institutional factors. In plain English, these are essentially the rules of the game. Historically, systems like zamindari, where wealthy landlords held the rights to the earth while the peasants did all the actual farming, meant the people working the land didn't actually own it. Even today, if a farmer is trapped by high-interest debts from a local broker because they can't access fair financing, they're often forced to sell their crops at rock-bottom prices. When the system is stacked against you like that, you have zero motivation and definitely no capital to invest in better farming. Then we have the technological factors. Honestly, a lot of the sector still relies on much older methods, traditional seeds, animal power, and the sense of what's called fatalism, which basically means a complete reliance on the unpredictable monsoon rains. Technologically speaking, these traditional methods just simply cannot compete with the incredible yields generated by modern scientific agriculture, which uses tractors, disease-resistant hybrid seeds, and chemical fertilizers. And the third roadblock is population pressure. Over the decades, as families grew, land was divided up among family members into smaller and smaller plots. It's like slicing a pie. When a massive number of people have to depend on a tiny piece of land, even a really good harvest gets sliced way too thin. So the total production might be fine, but the actual income per laborer drops drastically. All right, we know the problems. Section 4. How do we fix it? First, we really have to understand the sheer potential here. Expert economists like Dr. M.S. Swaminathan tell us that fixing agriculture isn't just about food security. It is the ultimate key to solving rural unemployment. When you modernize agriculture, you create this amazing ripple effect of wealth and jobs throughout the entire rural economy. The economist P.C. Mahalanobis actually ran the numbers on this, and the comparison is mind-blowing. He estimated that a single crore invested in agriculture can generate employment for 40,000 people and boost production by 5.7%. Now, compare that to big industry, where that exact same investment employs only 500 people. I mean, the return on investment for human livelihoods in agriculture is just absolutely staggering. But to unlock all that potential, we have to fix the institutional problems first. And this is where tools like NABARD come in. You can think of NABARD as sort of the central bank specifically designed for farmers. By providing fair credit, they help rescue farmers from those exploitative local lenders we talked about earlier. Plus, it funds essential agricultural research and training, which helps shift the farmer's mindset from traditional fatalism toward market-oriented scientific planning.
On the technology side, upgrading requires a few straightforward but highly effective steps. To transform a struggling farm into a high-yield powerhouse, farmers need access to hybrid seeds, properly balanced chemical fertilizers, and guaranteed water through irrigation projects, so they aren't just staring at the sky hoping for rain. Add in scientific soil testing, and you basically remove the guesswork from farming entirely. All of this brings us to Section 5, the Green Revolution.
Back in the 1950s, farming was almost purely traditional. But then, in the early 60s, the government launched a pilot project in 7 districts. It was such a wonderful success that by 1966, this high-yielding varieties program was rolled out nationally. Fast forward to 2013-14, and food grain production had exploded to a massive 264.4 metric tons.
This monumental shift is what we call the Green Revolution. Instead of just accepting a bad harvest as fate, the Green Revolution brought certainty directly to the soil. It was a rapid, aggressive technological leap that proved an important point. When you give farmers the right inputs, water, fertilizer, and scientifically developed seeds, the land will absolutely provide. And the results speak for themselves. The most important achievement by far was escaping the looming threat of widespread famines. Food grain production multiplied by 2.5 times, and cash crops like cotton skyrocketed by 17 times. Plus, with reliable irrigation, farmers could suddenly grow multiple crops in a single year, supercharging their land's overall output. So, the science undeniably works. But as we look at the data today, with nearly half the country still working in this sector but generating only a fraction of the income, I want to leave you with this provocative thought to ponder. Technology and science gave us the Green Revolution, sure, but what institutional and economic changes will it take to spark the next true revolution for the livelihoods of the farmers themselves? Something to think about. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll see you in the next one.